Hi friends, this is Sumit from Madira Diaries, and in this channel we review and experience different types of Madiras. Today, for the first time, we'll do a collaboration video with Chris from Bourbon of the Week. If you get a chance, do check out his channel where Chris reviews different kinds of bourbons. When I did a review on Blanton's, we got a comment from Bourbon of the Week which got us talking to Chris, and we decided we come up with an idea to work on a video together. And the idea was we try doing a whiskey wars video with an Indian whiskey compared to an American whiskey. Of course, we would try to compare an Indian versus American whiskey on the same price range. We'll also use the scoring technique that Chris uses on his channel, where he divides the scoring into drinkability, taste and price, all on the scale of 10. Drinkability would mean how easy it is to drink it and how smooth it is, so just ease of drinking. Whereas taste would be where all the flavor profiles come in and how good the whiskey tastes. And third would be the price range. Is the bottle or the whiskey worth the price range that we are talking about? We would then compare our scores and see who wins this whiskey war. Is it an Indian whiskey or an American whiskey? For the Indian whiskey, we chose Paul John's Indian Single Malt Nirvana. Paul John Distillery is based in Goa in India, and this whiskey is their entry-level single malt. This was introduced in 2019 and is present in over 19 countries. For the grain, they use malted barley, which is grown across the western Indian states of Rajasthan, Haryana and the foothills of the Himalayas. They are distilled in copper pot stills and aged in American charred oak barrels that were once used to make bourbon whiskey. It's a 40% alcohol by volume, chill filtered, but it does not have any age statement. It is estimated to be aged around 3 years, which based on the Indian climate is equivalent to almost 12 years, say if it was aged in Scotland. We compare it to Scotland because most of the single malt whiskies and the techniques that Indians are using for whiskey making process comes from learnings from Scotch whiskey. The whiskey comes in a beautiful orange box with a picture of an elephant showing the vibrancy and cultures of the Indian subcontinent. Also, the sides have a lot more artwork coming from different parts of India. Let's unbox it and see how the bottle looks like, and then move on to the tastings. Beautiful olive green bottle. Again, says 40% alcohol by volume, product of Goa. It's an unpeated single malt whiskey, 80 proof. So our Indian whiskey would be Paul John's Nirvana. Now I hand it over to Chris from Bourbon of the Week to introduce the American whiskey that Nirvana would be competing against.
Hello Madira Diaries, and thank you Sumit for having me on the channel. I'm really excited about this whiskey wars that we've collaborated on together. Like you said, my name's Chris. I'm with Bourbon of the Week, where we review strictly bourbons on our channel. So I was left with the task of picking which bourbon we were going to use against the Paul John, and I have chose Old Tub by Jim Beam. Now this is a bottled in bond bourbon, which basically means it has to meet a couple requirements to put that on the label. One of which, it has to be at least 4 years old. A second one, it has to be exactly 100 proof. Third, it has to be distilled by the same distiller in the same season and bottled and put on the label who did that process. Lastly, it has to be distilled in a government warehouse so that they can oversee production on this. The interesting thing about this particular bottle is it was only available in 375 milliliter bottles in the gift shop at the Old Tub Jim Beam Distillery up until 2020, until they released it to the general public, which is how we were able to get our hands on it for this particular review. So I'm going to send it back over to Sumit. He's going to give you his numbers, then we're going to kick it back over here. I'll give you my numbers, and we'll see where these two fall on the list against each other.
So now comes the exciting time of tasting and scoring the two whiskies. So let's start with the Paul John Nirvana. I have never tasted this, so I'm very curious. It will be my first time. It's a beautiful bottle again. love the sound. Definitely a very light color whiskey compared to, you can see the dark American whiskey. So it could be because it's a lower age, but again it's a single malt. Let's smell this. Definitely very fruity, cinnamony, getting very little of the oak. Hard to find that vanilla from the American aged barrels, but let's give it a try. You do get more of that Scotch characteristics. Definitely fruity, more like a fruit cake. For drinkability, since it's more on the smoothness, it is very easy to drink. It didn't go down harsh. Again, it's a 80 proof, but I would give it a 8.7 on drinkability. Now let's go on the taste. Let's take another sip. It's a very nice single malt, I would say. Lot of cinnamon, cloves. That's that spicy finish to it. I must say I'm impressed with what an Indian single malt has done. They have really done a very good job. And since it's unpeated, you don't get that. For the people who don't like peatiness, it can be a very good introductory whiskey for someone. So I would give it around an 8.5 on the taste scale. And for the pricing, I got this bottle for around $30 US. It's hard to find single malt whiskies in that price range. So I thought they have priced it very fairly. So I would give it a 9 on 10 on the price range, because again, hard to find single malts in that price category. So that brings our average score for the Paul John at 8.7. Now let's go try the Old Tub and let's see what the scoring for the Old Tub is. Again, a Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey bottled in bond, which means it's 50% alcohol by volume and 100 proof. Definitely a more amber, darker color than the Paul John. Let's nose it. So you're getting the bourbon flavors, the vanillas, the caramel, toffee, butterscotch. So the very common bourbon flavors. Let's take a sip. Cheers. For drinkability, I would say, since it's a little on the higher proof, you can feel the harshness a little, but still for a higher proof it went down pretty good. So I would still give it an 8.3, I would say, for the drinkability. Now let's taste this. Again, all the caramel, vanilla, the flavors which you get out of a bourbon. It's from Jim Beam. They make very good bourbons, as you know. I would give it an 8.7 for the taste scale. And for the price point, I would say I got it in the range of $25 or $26 over here, which is pretty good for a bottled in bond 50% ABV bourbon. So I would give it a 9.1, slightly even higher than the Paul John. So that brings the average around the same, 8.7. So I believe this was 8.73, this is 8.7. So let's see what Chris scored, add the numbers, and I'll let Chris announce the results.
So like Sumit said, we're going to do this with price, taste, drinkability, starting with drinkability, and I'm going to start with the old tub here to see what I think on those particular things. Solid pop, by the way. I've never had a single malt whiskey, so I'm really excited to see. It's very interesting right off the bat. This old tub being a 4-year age. This is this one, this is this one. You can see right off the bat the color difference on these. We'll try to get a close-up for you. But let's start off with the old tub and see how this one does. As we say here on Bourbon of the Week, time for the traditional sip. As for this has a little bit of a kick to it. Now let's keep in mind it is a 100 proof bourbon. But as for drinkability on this, it's not the easiest to sip. If you're looking for something really smooth, again, being a 100 proof bourbon, it is a 13% rye, and if you don't know, the rye is really going to raise that spicy note for it. But this seems more like an ethanol kick than a spicy note, at least right off the bat there. So I'm not going to give this the greatest score on drinkability. I'm going to give this maybe like a 7.9. But that's going to bring us over into taste on this. And I think this does a very good job with the flavor profile. I really do like this compared to other bourbons. So I do want to make sure that I am comparing it to the Indian whiskey that we're going to do and not just other bourbons that I know. But as for the flavor profile, it's really good. It's a very Jim Beam type of product, obviously coming out of the Jim Beam distillery. Once you get past that ethanol kick, you can really pick up some good flavors here. Very good oak flavor, a little bit of the peanutty flavor that always comes with Jim Beam, but it's just an overall, almost like maybe like a mango or an orange flavor as well. I'm not the best at picking out flavor notes. I can just kind of tell you if it tastes good, if it doesn't taste good. But these particular flavors, very sweet, and then that rye spice at the end. So a very good balanced taste profile, if you ask me. I'm gonna give this a pretty good score on taste. Let's give this like I'm gonna say like an 8.9 when it comes to taste. That is really good. So last, that's going to bring us into price on this, and this is a very reasonably priced bottle at $17 here in Pennsylvania, so I can't complain about the price at all. When you're talking about a bottled and bond 100 proof Jim Beam named bourbon, you're really getting all three things that you want out of a bottle. The age is there at 4 years, the proof is there, the flavor is really good, even though that drinkability might not be the best. I can't give this a terrible score. $17 is really the lowest end of the spectrum that you're going to get a bourbon for. I'm going to give this like a 9.2 when it comes to price. So now after a little bit of water, let's see what the Paul John has to offer. Again, I've never had an Indian whiskey and I've never had a single malt, so I'm excited to see what it's got. Time for the traditional sip. Ooh. So that is different. It's very light. Very oaky at the end there. Let's straight drinkability. I've honestly didn't know that it was this easy to sip another type of whiskey like this. This is smooth. When they talk about smooth, I don't know if they're talking about single malts or if they're talking about scotch, but this is smooth. There's no real ethanol kick at all. It almost tastes like a wine taste to it, but sticking straight drinkability. Let's see, this came in at a 40%. So this is an 80 proof compared to the 100 proof. So it is lower. But at the same time, I've had 80 proof bourbons that still have a kick to it. This has no kick at all, no spice notes to it at all, nothing to give you any type of ethanol flavor. I'm going to give this a really good score. When it comes to strictly drinkability, I'm going to give this I'm going to say like a 9.0, I think. That's fair. There's literally no bite to this at all. You wouldn't even know you're drinking alcohol. But that's going to bring us over into taste on this. And obviously being a bourbon guy myself, this isn't my favorite flavor profile, although I can't really put my nose on what it is. It's almost like a wine with like an oak finish to it. It's really a unique flavor, to be quite honest with you. And being my only single malt Indian whiskey, I don't hate it. I don't hate it at all. I think I could sip on this. I don't know about over and over and over again, but definitely if I wanted something different for the night, I could sip on this. I'm going to give it one more taste and see if I can pull out any crazy notes that I didn't notice on the first one. So yeah, it's very light, very fruity. Like I said, wine, grapes come out kind of a little bit. And then on the end is that very prevalent oak note, which is kind of a weird combination to go from wine to oak. Again, not my favorite when it comes to the flavor profile, but I don't hate it at all. I would probably be able to sip on this. I'm going to give this like a like an 8.1 when it comes to taste. Again, I think it's a little light, a little watered down, but that's probably what you get for a lower quality, cheaper whiskey versus something that maybe if we did like a $40 or a $50 bottle, you'd really be able to appreciate a little bit more of a flavor profile with it. So we're going to go with an 8.1. So last but not least, that's going to get us into price on this. And the price of this bottle, imported obviously from India, is only $26.99, which surprised me. I thought it would be a little bit more expensive. I know people from overseas who get American bourbons and American whiskeys, and they jump the price up pretty substantially to get it over there. So for $27, it is only an 80 proof bourbon, but a very good lighter flavor profile and exceptional drinkability. Again, I don't know if that's just what you get for an unpeated single malt whiskey or if that's not the standard. But as for drinkability, it did very well. As for taste, I think it could have a little bit more of a flavor profile. Not my favorite, but at the same time, I could easily drink this. And I think if I got more into the world of what I'm actually sipping on here, I would be able to actually appreciate this for what it is. So $26.99, not a bad price. I'm going to give this like an 8.5, and I think that's a fair spot for it. So here's the moment we've all been waiting for. Drum roll, please. We have my review on the Old Tub, which comes to an average of 8.67 repeating. As for the Paul John, we had an 8.53. So the Old Tub squeaked out just by a little bit, not much at all. As for Smeet, he had an 8.70 on the Old Tub and an 8.73. So if we add those two scores up on the Old Tub, it's going to give us an 8.685. And as for the Paul John, it's going to give us an 8.63. So very, very close on these two. But the Old Tub squeaks out just by a little bit. I think I obviously like bourbon a little bit better, but this Paul John put up an amazing fight, and I will definitely be drinking a little bit more of that, as well as maybe trying out the single malt world a little more than I would have before, because I've never had one, and I was never interested until now. So thank you, Smeet, for allowing me to try that, and influencing my flavor profile to something a little bit different. But that's where we're going to land this week. Thank you again for having me. Make sure you check me out, Bourbon of the Week on YouTube, Bourbon of the Week on Instagram, and thank you, Smeet and Madira Diaries, for giving me an opportunity to be on the channel. Please don't drink and drive. Drink responsibly. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that like button. Turn notifications on. And if you really like this collaboration, make sure you comment down below so we can keep bringing you content like this. And like I say at the end of every one of my reviews, please wash your hands. This pandemic ain't over, y'all. And the only way it's going to get better is if we all work together. So that's where we're going to leave you this week. We'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.